All right, everybody, welcome to the Otherppl Show. My name is Brad Listi, and I'm in Los Angeles. This is my podcast. Thank you for listening. I hope you're doing okay out there. Don't forget to subscribe wherever you listen. Hit the subscribe button. You can also subscribe to this show on YouTube, and you can follow me on social media if you want. I'm on Instagram and Bluesky. So it's Sunday, and as such, it is time for a new character studies episode. I had a great conversation with Bonny, a 61-year-old geospatial scientist from Greensboro, North Carolina. That conversation is coming up in just a bit. Today's episode is brought to you by Mary Sue Rucci Books, publisher of the debut novel Tilt by Emma Patty. Tilt is the official April pick of the Otherppl book club. That is my book club. You should sign up for my book club. You can do that at the show's official website, otherppl.com. Get a new book delivered to your door every 30 days, and I interview book club authors on this show. I interviewed Emma Patty and aired her episode just a few days ago. We had a great conversation about Tilt. It is a gripping debut, a very impressive debut novel about a woman who is 37 weeks pregnant, and she is caught in the aftermath of a massive earthquake in the Pacific Northwest. It's a page turner. It's tense. It's intense. It's funny. It's psychologically astute. It's all of that stuff. Again, the book is called Tilt by Emma Patty, available from Mary Sue Rucci Books. So I do a weekly email newsletter, a quick plug for it. You can sign up at bradlisti.substack.com and you will hear from me in your inbox once a week. I would love it if you did that. And I also want to give a quick plug to my new company, which is called Deep Dive, and it will be launching officially later this year. Deep Dive specializes in the creation of long-form educational audio courses. And the debut course from Deep Dive is called How to Write a Novel. And it features more than 50 hours of never-before-heard conversations with dozens of today's leading writers. And I'm very excited about it. So the website for Deep Dive is www.deepdive.audio. You can sign up for the Deep Dive newsletter there to keep up with all the latest news. And you can follow Deep Dive on Instagram and Bluesky. Okay, so it is now time for this week's character studies conversation. My guest, once again, is named Bonny. She is 61, and she is a geospatial scientist from Greensboro, North Carolina, and just an absolute delight to talk with Bonny and to hear her story. She is a force of nature. She has a lot of good energy and a kind of indomitable spirit. That's how it seemed to me. So if you're brand new to the show, just to be clear, character studies episodes feature conversations with what I like to call civilians. These are not authors or journalists or media figures. They're not on this show to plug something. They are just here anonymously, appearing by first name only, talking with me about their lives. And it's about that. It's about having a good conversation with another human being and hearing who they are. So if you are out there and you or someone you know would be a great character studies guest, please know that you can email the show at letters@otherppl.com. So I think that does it. I think we're ready to begin with this, the 7th character study in the history of this program.
Hi, I'm Bonny. I'm 61 years old, and I'm a geospatial scientist. I'm actually from New Jersey. No surprise, usually, from my accent. I was born in Orange, New Jersey. And it's a great place to be from, I think. But I did leave quite soon after. I left New Jersey at 17 I could say yada, 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 like the Seinfeld episode. But, it was, looking back nostalgically, it was a good childhood, but going through it, it was a little rough. Does that make sense?
I guess so. Yeah. I mean, yeah, there's always going to be bumps in the road, but like what was good about it and what was rough about it?
I guess it was so different. I mean, I was, biracial, and in a time when having a black father and a white mother was not like a thing. And my dad was a very culturally aware alcoholic. So he wasn't like, I always like to differentiate between the staggering guy in an alley with a brown paper bag, and then someone else who maybe didn't achieve their full potential, but was still very informed, very intellectual, was a double bass player, knew multiple languages, but just had that thing that was sort of disruptive in what you might think a normal family dynamic would look like.
So are you an only child or do you have siblings?
No, I am the youngest girl of three girls, and I have a younger brother. So there's
All right.
four of us.
Okay. So how do you think your siblings would describe you as a child? What kind of child were you?
Oh, God. I'm kind of the outsider. I think they would think of me as being gregarious. I was a bit athletic, kind of social, just kind of always landed on my feet, sort of scrappy.
Did you fight?
Only when I had to, Brad.
But if you had to, you would.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
I feel like that's a Jersey thing. There's no, you don't shrink from a fight.
I just took things very seriously. Like if somebody, like getting on a bus, if somebody like touched me, I punched them. I mean, I just had this, it was, I don't know why. Maybe it's a New Jersey thing. I just was born a little tougher than most, maybe. And I just had a very clear idea of what the boundaries were.
So you're growing up in Orange, New Jersey. You're an intelligent kid, somewhat athletic, and you have a father who's a culturally aware alcoholic. I've never heard that description before, culturally aware alcoholic, but somebody who's like tuned in and, like you say, not the guy in the alley with the bottle and the brown paper bag, but maybe somebody who's like self-medicating and listening to good music.
Oh, all the jazz in the world, like I found out my washing machine plays The Trout by Schubert. And I only know that because my dad played The Trout by Schubert, and I recognize the tune. So, he would take lessons at Alice Tully Hall. I like to define that a little more because as a young person, my dad was Black and an alcoholic, both things that at the time I wasn't forward with. You don't want everyone to know your dad drinks too much. You don't want to stand out in a room racially in a time, when on the schoolyard, people would find out, are you Black or white? And depending on your answer, you either fought or you kind of just walked away.
Yeah. I mean, what was it like to have, to be biracial and to have a Black dad and to like navigate people's awareness of that? Because I could see, like, you present, it could be kind of either way.
Well, I get a lot of Spanish, so I would speak in Spanish a lot because people just assumed I was Spanish. So I would just kind of, okay, this is what we're doing.
Yeah. And as a kid, this isn't something that you're like born being even conscious of. He's just your dad. And yet pretty early on in life, I would imagine, especially considering like being a Gen Xer, right? Gen Xer.
Well, yes. I mean, technically, I would be a boomer, but I'm not a boomer. I'm a Gen Xer. I mean, that's just how I've always identified. But we left New Jersey when I was 7. I mean, not New Jersey, Somerset. Moved to Somerset when I was 7, which is a different area. So when we lived in Orange, it was more like fighting on the schoolyard. And, we were sent to school with hat pins in our hems. So we could fight. I know it sounds ridiculous, but then we moved to a white enclave, and that probably was worse, So it just was very different. You fit in where you fit in. The people that know you know you. The advent of Facebook was like scores of people reaching out to me and apologizing, and I'm like, I don't even know you. That's how much you mattered. you know that sort of thing.
Really? People on Facebook from your childhood would reach out and be like, I'm super sorry for how I treated you back in 19 whatever.
Yeah.
And how did you respond?
Like half of them I didn't even remember. You just really, I think it instilled in me like knowing who I was and knowing who I am. And the part that you don't know yet is I actually became acquainted with my dad's family after he was long gone. And the missing piece, like of where he came from and why we didn't know anything about ourselves. So I speak to you today as someone who has just gotten through all of that, in a very specific way that I wouldn't want to change a thing.
So growing up, you didn't really know like your dad's parents or
No, nobody talked about his race at all. I mean, I would hear it, obviously, when people were trying to talk, intentionally that way. But we used to joke, does mom know dad's black? Because, we didn't have any sort of a culture around it. In fact, I have an early memory of my dad coming up my grandmother's, my white mother's parents' back porch, and he hadn't straightened his hair. And I remember my mom and him having a fight about it. And I was just they didn't even see me. I was just sitting in a little lounge chair and I was like, well, this is interesting.
Like he had a fro? Is that what was happening?
Yeah, just a little like thing. He wasn't like wearing a zoot suit or anything. He just had a little fro and, she wasn't having it.
And so why didn't your dad's family like know you? Like why was there that disconnect?
Well, his mom died when he was very young. I think I found out of what now, but at the time we were told she died of tuberculosis, which could have been true. And my grandfather, I think he was alive. We just never met him. And whenever I brought him up to my dad, he would kind of just laugh, It just wasn't a thing. But on the black side of things, I don't think these people were even married. I don't think this was a marriage. I think it was just, and I get to cheat a little bit because my sister was very instrumental in building this out through whatever that was called, ancestry.com. So she found some of the missing pieces of the story. It was sad to me until I met his family and then I realized how wonderful they were. And are, the ones that don't really remember my father because the age difference. But his first cousins, I've met some of his cousins and his second cousins. And so seeing the familiarity in people that you don't even know can be quite healing as well. And my dad was my person. Through all of that, he was my person. How in your family, obviously I love my mother, but you just start seeing who the person is that you resemble, you remember that when they're no longer there, they leave the biggest void, that sort of thing.
What did your dad do?
He was an X-ray tech and always wanted to, we always had the big double bass in the corner and he would pick it up and he would play. And, he had been, one of his bosses wanted to put him through medical school because he was so brilliant. But he just never pulled the lever on any of it. He just lived. He's very good at what he did. He taught at all the hospitals, the radiology students, and he taught them all the tech. Very interesting.
So he was doing this. He probably was music his love?
I think so. Maybe that unachievable love because it just seems so unrealistic that somebody in that era could have that talent but never see it because we were his second family. He had another family before us and I don't know what he did or didn't do. Did he play the bass then? I don't know. There's little folklore and stories that are bandied about, but I don't know any of it, how factual any of it is.
So your dad had married another woman and had children with her before
Yeah.
he met your mom. So do you know those kids? Like, you don't?
I feel like, Brad, that I met them once. I believe this because my memory is like on point. I feel like one time a woman came to the door with two appropriately aged children, and we were hushed out to go play with these children. And I just thought, even without being told, that these were my, these were my dad's children. But no one is, my mother never would validate that. But I feel like I met them at that moment. But that's, never
you were
been
never
confirmed.
you were never explicitly told. This was just you intuiting it as a child.
Yes.
And so your dad's drinking, like he was able to keep this job as an X-ray tech, which is a job where you have to have your wits about you, right? I mean, you're doing this. It's not a mindless work being an X-ray tech.
But I think he lost it because of his drinking in the end.
Oh, he did. I was going to say, did it ever catch up with him?
I don't know if he was drunk or he just had enough, but there was some sort of an altercation that nobody speaks of, and he just kind of retired early.
And what about your mom?
She's still kicking.
Did she work, or was she?
She was, thank God, she was a teacher's aide. She wanted to work, but she wanted to be home when we were home.
Right.
So she had a nice career as a teacher's aide, which was kind of convenient because she had this, always this cultural awareness. A lot of moms don't have that if they're like, just not imbued in the education system. But, she was working in special ed and in all the, schools. And so she knew what was happening.
Yeah, I think that's one of the great benefits of being a teacher, whether it's like a high school teacher or a college instructor of some sort, is that you're interacting with young people on a regular basis. And it's a continuous flow of like new young people. You know what I'm saying? There's no stasis to it. So you get to sort of keep up with what's going on. And I don't know how you possibly would in the absence of that, unless you have children of your own, but then they eventually grow up and leave the house. And I feel like being
I'm still hip, Brad. I'm still hip.
Are you? But do you interact with young people? How do you stay hip? Is it just the internet?
My children. Yeah, they're hip.
And they make sure that you stay informed.
Well, but you're not there yet, but they tell you how uninformed you are, let's say, at all moments. So you're always kind of, going through. They're older. They don't live, well, one of them's back, but they don't live here full, so they're 28 and 23.
Wow. Yeah, I'm starting to get that from my daughter, just sort of telling me how little I know about everything. So you're growing up in Orange, and then you said you moved to Somerset.
Yes.
So you went from a black enclave in Orange to a white enclave in Somerset.
Yes.
And the white enclave might have been worse.
Well, I mean, Levitt historically has not been, they used to have in the deeds that you couldn't sell to blacks. We were after that, but come on, maybe 5 to 10 years since then. But yeah, I mean, everybody was white. I mean, we maybe had one black neighbor, and it was very interesting because like the black kids didn't know what to do with me. Like when you go into a school and you don't know anyone who's gravitating towards you, like who are your friendships? Where do they start, kind of a thing. And so I didn't really mesh. So that's where the fighting came in. Because I didn't understand any of this, when I was going through it, kind of a thing. Until, I saw Spike Lee in college. Then I was like, oh, that's what that was all about.
Wait, you actually saw Spike?
No, the movies, like all his
the
movies.
Okay.
Otherwise, I had no idea what all this was that I was living. It just was my reality. And then I realized, oh, okay, this is a thing.
And it defined itself for you at that point.
Oh, absolutely. In a great way, because I realized, well, it wasn't always just me, but the part that I find that served me well was, like you said, I could be in a room and people don't know I'm in the room, so they say things that you would not say if you knew there was a black person in the room. So I got, talk about a character study. You got to see people act in a way that they wouldn't act if you actually were there.
Right. That's like, did you ever see that Saturday Night Live skit in the 80s when Eddie Murphy dressed up like a white person? Mr. White?
I showed that to my kids maybe like 5 years ago because I just thought it's so funny.
Yeah. He's like on the bus and he's like, there was one other black man on the bus and he's dressed up like a white guy.
Yeah.
And then the black guy gets off and all of a sudden like the music comes on and they start serving drinks. But I mean, that also had to be probably horrifying for you to be in a room with a bunch of white people who don't realize that you are black and are saying things. I mean,
I was older, I was working in a restaurant in Princeton, and one of the guys, he was a Princeton student. He just came in, he wanted to make a little money. He was just bussing tables, and he left for the day. And my boss says, "Not bad for a mook," like right in front of me. And I was just like, what, where am I? What, like little things like that stayed in my brain that I was like, oh, you didn't,
And what do you do? Like, cause it's like in that moment, I can imagine just like hearing it and being a little bit shocked and then just carrying on. Or you could be like, hey, fuck you. I mean, I guess you have options, but it's probably hard to, sometimes you avoid confrontation.
Me? No.
No. Good. I'm glad to hear that. I think I might just be like, what? And then just feel tired and leave.
No. It's funny because this place in Princeton was so pivotal in my like modern era. Like this boss would always make sure I missed the last bus back to Rutgers so that he could drive me home. I don't know what he thought he was going to be able to do. So I was a cyclist. So I used to ride my bike to Princeton from Rutgers, which isn't, it's maybe 15 miles or something. And then at night I would hop back on that bike and I would ride through the dark streets. So I wouldn't have to get in this guy's car because I was like, you're not going to manipulate me like that. So I became a triathlete eventually just because I was doing all this riding and I just was good at it. And I took a problem and then the solution ended up having a positive outcome.
Well, good for you.
I know, it sounds weird, doesn't it?
A triathlete, huh?
Yeah, it's worse now. Now I run ultra races, but that's a whole other story.
So what does that even mean? Like, are you just constantly training? Like you have to be.
No, because I'm not trying to do well. I'm just trying to go out and run for 2 or 3 hours. I do that sort of thing now.
So what does your regimen look like? I'm curious.
I just get up. I have 2 hounds that I love to run with. I pack a pack and I head out on a trail and I just run, depending on the time of day. I listen to podcasts. I get ready for my work day because I have to read a lot for work. So I just get audio and I just listen to it. And, like a year ago now, I was in Mont Blanc and I ran 3 of the peaks.
Wow.
Yeah.
So you're in good shape.
I don't quit. How about that?
Well, that counts.
I mean, I feel like I could run for hours. A lot of people can't do that sort of a thing. And I train for it. Because, when you run on the trails in La Houche, there's a race called the UMTMB Chamonix, Mont Blanc. It's like the World Series of ultra racing. So I had 2 speaking gigs. One was in the Netherlands, one was in Switzerland. And I had 9 days between it. So I said, well, I'm going to go to Chamonix, France, and I'm going to run the peaks in that race. Whichever ones I could do from a home base in Chamonix. So I would just leave. I used to call it mountain waffles because the ladies in the hotel where I stayed, they would give me little waffles to bring with me up the mountain for energy. And I would it was phenomenal. I'm up there running at 10,000 feet. I loved it.
So then this begins with you riding your bike. You said like 15 miles in between Princeton and Rutgers. Is that right?
Yeah. Doing hard things, I think, is where I should have paraphrased that. I learned to do hard things at a young age. And when you start doing hard things, you realize you could do other hard things, that kind of thing. because I wanted to meet the person that I could be, instead of the victim in a situation where somebody was preying on you, basically. I wanted to have the upper hand, and I didn't want to have to be beholden to somebody because the last bus out of Princeton had left. I wanted to, okay, I'm going to get on my bike and I'm going to ride, and I never had the only bad thing happened when somebody threw an egg at me. But it's
for cause or just for no cause?
No, it's like 11 o'clock at night. The bar closed. I'm trying to get home back to like Rutgers. And I guess, kids ride around and they see a cyclist out there. It's probably less common then than it is now. And they just were like, they threw an egg. I just rode faster, and took off down another alley and got out of there,
And so did you go to college at Rutgers?
Yeah, I went to Douglas, actually.
And studied what?
Exercise science, of all things.
So you're a jock. I mean, obviously.
No. A jock.
I mean, come on! You're running ultra marathons and running from peak to peak in the Alps.
But I don't do it. Like I don't like. I used to pay for races. I don't do that anymore. I go out. I just find a nice trail and I go run on it for a couple of days and do my own. I did a Badwater race, a 50K. It's called Badwater Cape Fear, where you run on the sand for way too long. That was probably the hardest race I ever did. And then I thought, I vacation here every summer. I could do it for free. So I don't pay for races anymore. I just go out and do it.
So you talked about this job that you had in Princeton and how it kind of formed you in terms of being somebody who learned that she can do hard things. Like you're riding your bike instead of getting a ride with this guy who was not so great. And I feel like in anybody's life, there are formative experiences in youth that when you have the benefit of hindsight, you can kind of look back and say like, that was pivotal and that shaped me in some fundamental way. Aside from like, we talked about your parents and your father's alcoholism and this kind of mystery side of your family, all of that stuff, I would imagine it's pretty fundamental to who you are. But is there anything that happened in your childhood that when you look back, you say that was it, or this set of experiences really was formative?
I'll be completely honest. If I could put it in a bubble and it's not a thing, but did you ever hear of something called EST?
Yeah, I did it. I did the,
the forum.
I thought I was going to write a book. I thought I was going to write a book. I was going to do like I forget what the novel was, but it was going to involve like a kind of like self-improvement guru type guy. And so I was like, I'm going to go to EST and study this.
Did you do it?
I sat through the whole thing for 3 days and I found it to be one of the creepiest experiences of my life.
No, I loved it. It was very creepy, but It was also formative for me.
How old were you?
I was in college.
Yeah, I was a little bit older, and I think it might come down to the person, but like the guy who did ours was just like very strange.
Our guy he was phenomenal. And the part that I understood, and you're going to love this because a writer, is like you would have to stand up. You know what it is too. It is exactly, who's that guy? It's Tony Robbins. Like he took all that stuff from whatever this was.
What was it? Wasn't it Werner Erhard? Is that who the guy?
Yes,
the guy who started EST.
I don't see what Tony Robbins does that's any different from that, at all. But what I liked about it is people would be in the audience and they're supposed to stand up and say, what has been the thing that's been like, why are you not a success, or why are you sad sack or whatever? And they'd get up and they'd be like, blah, 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 blah. And the guy would stop. He goes, that's your story. What is it you're trying to tell me? And he'd start stripping away all the blah, 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 blah. And then they'd get down to the nugget. And I love that because then nothing can attach itself to you, right? No, you're not going to say, "Oh, my dad was an alcoholic. Woe is me. Now I'm going to go to adult children's of this, that. No, my God, I should have special because da, 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 da." No, that's just a thing. That's not you. And that part of that clarity has served me very well. Like I don't hold on to anything. There's no resentment. I don't hate this person. I don't hate that person. I can get to a clear way of understanding why somebody that's transactional acted that way in that situation that was harmful to me. And then it's gone. And I got that from that. I believe so. And to be honest, there's 4 kids in my family. One's a recovering heroin addict, one's bipolar, one's morbidly obese, and one travels the world talking about the intersection of humanity and tech. You know what
And
I
that's
mean?
you. And that's you.
Yeah. So I don't know. I mean, that's an N of 4. I don't know what to tell you, but something out of it, that weirdness. And it was weird because you have a whole bunch of people in a room that don't want to be there. What was the old saying? Hey, give me $500. I'll tell you you're an asshole. I'll tell you for free. You know what I mean? That kind of thing. I hated it. I fought the whole thing. My boyfriend at the time made me go. I hated it every second of it. When it was over, I didn't come out like, oh, now I see. No, that didn't happen until years later. And I started like pondering and thinking,
But it was just like a confrontation. It made you, I guess, like at least come into contact with what might potentially be your story, the story of like having an alcoholic father or this, that, and the other.
Yeah.
And realizing that it wasn't like definitive. It wasn't you.
Well, and the I guess the good part of me telling you all that stuff is that, it made me see my dad as a person. And I started taking him out to lunch, and I would tell him, drink a martini with me. If you're going to drink, just let's have a drink. You have permission. Let's have a cocktail together. And we would have lunch, and he could be who he was. And out of all my siblings, I had the relationship with my dad. We were he had Alzheimer's disease in the end. And we were still very, very close through all of that. I used to sing to him in a Nina Simone voice, and he would hold my hand and he would sing with me. I mean, we always had a little bit of a connection until the very, very end.
You understood each other. You understood him.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And I think too, like with addiction, there's so much shame involved, right? Like you're drinking and it's too much. On some core level, what you're doing is harmful to yourself and to your loved ones, and yet you can't stop yourself. And then you do it, and then you're hungover or something, and you feel ashamed of yourself, so you drink more, right? Like that's kind of the cycle. And maybe what your insight was that you kind of helped your dad hang out with you without shame.
Yeah, it strips all the other stuff away, and that and to tell you the truth, out of all my siblings, I'm closest with my brother. I mean, he's in recovery, obviously. Well, not obviously, but he's in recovery. And he's the light of my life. I mean, he just is, watching someone who's been through what he's been through, just enjoy that. He loves what I love. He loves the outside. He likes forests. He likes the woods. He likes all of that stuff. He's my person. So either I'm just drawn to people with addictions, or maybe people with addictions just strip away so much of that artifice that allows you to see who they are if you're patient and willing to look.
Yeah, I mean, I've often said that some of my favorite guests on my podcast are people who are in recovery because they tend to be really good about talking about their inner life. And maybe there's a humility in it, especially if they've kind of gone through the paces in recovery and they've sort of come out the other side a little bit. There's a vulnerability and a self-knowledge that is enviable. And there's also like a Kurt Vonnegut line where he characterized AA as like the finest church in America or something. But it's a place where people can find genuine fellowship and can be like genuinely authentic and vulnerable in front of one another and can confess to one another. And there's really nothing quite like it. Like, in a more traditional like Christian church, there might be confessional or something, but you're talking to a priest. Whereas in AA, you're kind of testifying to one another, and there's something deeply healing and therapeutic and human about it. And it's a rare experience. Like, even if you're not struggling with addiction, I think human beings could benefit from that kind of connection and that kind of exchange.
Like, I don't know if I heard it from you or where, but somebody was talking about mental health being how you go behind closed doors. And now you can talk about what's bothering you because there's no open space, there's no open square where people can talk about their life or what's hurting them or the pain that they're suffering. And, I had a friend that said to me, she says, "Oh gosh, my dad's been dead now for almost a year. Should I feel this sad?" And I was like, what a, I don't connect with that question. I'm like, yeah, you should feel what you feel. I mean, yeah, I could hear Wagner right now and probably start sobbing. The first time my children saw me cry was from an opera. I mean, it's just because it reminded me of a place and a time that reminded me of him, So I think we need to be more open. And that's why I love conversation. I love it. I am completely honest when I'm in conversation with people, because I think if people hear, oh, this person feels that, because, I work in a male dominated space, and I don't hold back. When I used to work at a pharmaceutical company, and, I was 12 months pregnant at the time. And people would ask me to go to these meetings. And I'm like, you know what? I'm going to just make an eyeball over here and you go to the meeting and let me know what you find out. Like I wasn't one of these people that hid the fact that I was creating a human or that I needed these certain things in my life to be happy and to be successful. I feel like you can have everything, just not all at once at the same time, and I don't understand when I'm brought in to train people about, because, in a sciencey world, you have to talk about things like that. Like, well, how should I balance planning a family around my career? I'm like, what are you talking about? Just have your career, just go out and live your life. I mean, if dudes were doing this, they'd be bragging about it. Like, God, this is going to be, I just had a period to end all periods. I had they would be talking about this stuff and bragging at the water cooler. And we're like, oh, this doesn't happen to us. It's like I'm not that person.
And you've never struggled with substance like others in your family. Like that was never an issue for you?
No, we talked about that too. My family and I think mine was always control, like always going to school, getting another degree, doing another thing, I've been to the White House. I've spoken at NASA. I mean, little things like that. It's just this trajectory of asking to be part of spaces and not going. I think a lot of people, if they just asked, they would have access. And I think I just have that as an addiction, not anything. Like I don't even drink anymore. I'll have a drink, but the results aren't pleasant for anyone involved.
That's how I am. I'm too fucking old. It's over. And, I feel like in a family where there is somebody struggling with addiction, there is often a child. I think I've read stuff like that, that there's often a child who's kind of the achiever, or there's a child who's trying to kind of make things right and like fix things. So maybe that's who you are. Like you're the person who sort of channeled her energies in the direction of kind of getting stuff done and creating a life. It sounds like you took a healthy approach.
But I don't remember being intentional about it at all. I mean, I failed out of college the first go round. I didn't want to read the Canterbury Tales by Chaucer. I was like, oh, hell no. And I just left. I didn't enroll. I didn't do anything. I just was like, this isn't happening. And I just disappeared myself.
That was it. Where were you in school?
I was at Rutgers.
Oh, you were? Okay.
I ended up going back. But I just didn't want to do the reading list that I had. It was, my sister was sick at the time. She's fine now, but I was caregiver, sort of, it just was a lot going on in my life. And the funny thing is, the circle on that book, the Canterbury Tales, is, this isn't fair to you because it would probably stimulate a lot more questions, but I was at Maya Angelou's estate sale, as one does.
As one does, yeah.
And I'm looking at her books, and I see the Canterbury Tales. I'm like, oh, come on, sister, I'm taking it. And I took it, home, and I read it. And it's funny because it was one of the few times I went to an estate sale where my husband knew how to behave. I'm like, you go to the kitchen and you get stuff. I want stuff that James Baldwin touched. You know what I mean? And then I'll go to the library because only I know my lived experience and what books would matter to me. So I was just like, and he was up there doing his thing.
So what did you wind up walking away with? You got the Canterbury Tales. You got Maya Angelou's copy of the Canterbury Tales, and then what else?
Walden Pond, a great book about a cat in Paris. Some other books that I gave away to people as like little gifts. I didn't get anything like pivotal, but I did get like I don't think it's a true, what do they call this? Waldorf bowl. It's a big bowl. And then I got this other little bowl that I found wedged in the dirt behind her potting shed. And I use it in a storytelling class when I say, look at this. And I talk about the glaze and the color. And then I talk about, I got it from an estate sale of Maya Angelou behind her potting shed. Now, which one of those is a story and which one of those is just me listing facts? So I love that bowl because it means a lot to me.
Yeah, that's cool. And I think, were there a lot of people there?
Oh, we had to wait in a line, and there was like a big sign. She taught at Wake Forest here, and she lived in Winston-Salem. So she had this house. That's a whole other story. But it was quite interesting. But I like the way it closed the loop on the Canterbury Tales because that was in my soul for decades. But once I brought that home, done and done.
You read it.
Yes, and it's actually a good book.
So you're in college. You're an exercise science major. This is your second go round in college, right? At this point?
Yes. Yeah, I disappeared for a while. And then when I came back, this is how my brain works. I'm thinking like, I'm not going to just reapply because maybe I won't get in. So what I decided to do is take a summer course, and I was a little older, so I'm going to kill it. I'm just going to knock it out of the park. So I took all these really hard courses and did really, really well. And then I asked the teachers to be an advocate for me to get me back into college. Because I didn't, who's the famous author? Can't think of her name. But anyway, she has a master class, and they asked her why she didn't run for political office. And she said, because I was filthy. Roxane Gay. She said that because I was filthy. I was thinking the same thing. Like, if I didn't want to go to school, I was terrible. I put a sign on the door saying exam canceled and just went away, and then came back when the exam was supposed to start. Like, oh my God, this is horrible. And then I would just leave with everybody else. I mean, I really was not, I was devious, let's say.
That's the time in life to be devious, though, right?
Yes, it served me well.
So you got your degree in exercise science, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you're now a geospatial scientist. So, take me through your 20s.
Wait, you missed 2 degrees. Sorry. I got my doctorate in chiropractic, and then I mastered in biology, studying population genetics.
Wow. What was the end game? Like, what were you working towards? Did you have a vision of what you wanted to be?
I didn't want to be bored. I liked, I picked chiropractic because I didn't want to cut into bodies and all that stuff. And then my first day in the lab in the chiropractic school I went to was a giant dead body. And I was like, oh, okay, this is how we're doing this. So I loved it. I mean, I know how the body works inside and out. I know everything that you could possibly know to be able to talk in a scientific room. I didn't really practice. I started leaning more towards the science, the deep science part of it, because I would open the clinic and I would have a free thing I lived in Oxnard, near Oxnard, California.
Yeah.
So I would have all the little pickers come in. I'm going to adjust their backs because that's what they need, bent over like that all the time, as they are. but they're coming in with like diseases. I mean, they were sick because these were our migrant workers, and it made me want to help them. So I was going to go to medical school, and that's what brought me to North Carolina.
Okay, so wait, how did you get to Oxnard though? You were in Jersey.
The chiropractic school was in California. It was in Whittier, California. So when I got my doctorate, I went to Whittier, California. It was called Los Angeles College of Chiropractic. Now it's a big. Can't remember the name of it. They won't like that, but it's a big conglomerate of schools where you go for physical therapy, occupational therapy, everything. And it's still in Whittier.
And you could, like, to this day, could you give a chiropractic adjustment?
My husband wouldn't let me, but other unsuspecting people might. It's just like, I made it so far. I'm not going to shit in the bag the rest of my life. He's a chiropractor, though. He's very good. So that's why I probably could run so far at my age is, I got the inside scoop.
He gives you adjustments.
Oh, sure.
Oh, man, that's got to be great.
I know. Little secret. Marry your chiropractor.
I was going to say. So you're a doctorate in chiropractic, and then what was the other thing?
Population genetics. I mastered in biology. What happened was I was going to. I realize what a dense life I've had. So I'm in this program where I'm hand plucked from promising brown people by the NIH to go to medical school and serve populations that need medical care. That's underserved populations. So at the time I was accepted into the program, these were phone interviews. I find out after I come all the way to Winston-Salem that the person in charge of the program had told her staff I wasn't Black enough. So she was not granting me the interviews that I needed to get the last little check mark so I could matriculate into medical school. And at the time I was pregnant with my first child. So I wasn't about to fight, the system and try to get in and all that. I met with the dean of the medical school and he looked me right in the eye, Brad, no lie, puts his hand up and says, I don't know why you're fighting for this. And he goes, one complication with your pregnancy and you're out of the game anyway. Like to my face, says this to me.
What did you say?
It was the first time and I was fairly young. I had never been in a room with adults where somebody was bold-faced lying, knew that you knew they were bold-faced lying, and just kept going. I mean, just didn't care. Like, just was like, things that I knew were true, she was saying, it just was crazy. It was crazy.
Wow. So, population genetics, like what even is population genetics? What does that mean?
Well, it was very smart for me. I was studying Arctic lake fishes in glaciation, looking at, it's called the geotrophic morphic hypothesis, thinking like when environments change, the genetic disposition will change, right? Because if the glaciers move the lakes in such a way that the species can no longer, produce with each other, then you're going to have isolated sets of genes. That's kind of really bastardizing it, but just to not make it any more boring than it has to be. So that's what I was studying. And the reason I picked it is because they had no method of getting the genetic material out of these frozen species. Oh no, they were in alcohol. They'd never done it before. So I was like, well, here I come. So I invented the way to get the DNA out of them. And I did this thing. And I did it because he was my thesis advisor was the kindest man that ever walked the planet. And I was leaving another lab with the most evil woman that ever walked the planet. So I needed a soft place to land. So I picked his lab and I did all that work and it served me very well. A bench scientist's mind is something that serves you very well in the modern era.
How so?
Because nobody can pull a shiesty on you. I mean, you know science, fact, how the world works, the limits of like a PhD in some obscure scientific thing. You realize how important the world is and context built around it is. It's not an isolated little thing. It's not a story. It has to be built out. Like you can be completely factual without being factually complete. So I could study, 7 years looking at some stupid little organism and then come out and be like, well, I'm a PhD. Who gives a shit? That doesn't even, what is that going to do? If you don't know how to extend the story, what's the point? So I always tell people when I talk that I'm a recovering bench scientist, and they seem to know what I'm talking about.
And a bench scientist is somebody who's just like in the lab.
Yeah. Like a wet lab. You're working with real things. You're not like back in the day, we had to pull out the genetic material and load these big gels with it. Now it's all automatic. But if you punctured a gel, all the stuff would ruin the whole gel and you had to do it over again. I used to have to go to the -70 freezer in the middle of the night with my son strapped to my back because the alarms went off. And, it's just a whole, my son was in the lab with me when I would get a big sheep's eyeball and we'd dissect it.
Memories.
Yeah.
So you mentioned earlier that you invented a way to extract DNA from these samples from a frozen lake or whatever?
Well, no, there actually had been in alcohol too long. And it wasn't like an invention. It was like, you just kept trying stuff until you got the PCR until you were able to replicate genetic material. So it was just trial and error. And finally I got it to work. Because you're supposed to have them only in there for less than 6 months. And I think these things have been like years. But I really wanted to work with this professor. So I made, I just painstakingly did the research to figure out how to do it, blah, blah, blah. The rest is history.
And so you are a new mother as this is all happening, as you just talked about with your son. How old were you at this stage of life?
I had my first kid at 32 and the second one at like 38.
Okay. So motherhood. In the, all that you have going on as a person, as a scholar and a professional, you're obviously married to your chiropractor, you're getting adjustments, and then parenthood, that changes the calculus pretty dramatically in terms of how we exist, right? You're no longer just existing for yourself. Can you just talk about becoming a mother and how that changed things?
Well, I'm a pragmatist too. So I was like, they joined my life. I didn't join theirs. Like they're hopping on planes, going to France. I mean, they just, I wasn't that precious. Like, my kids are everything to me, but I think they're so who they are today because I always met them where they were. That nobody wore little outfits with teddy bears and shit on it. They just they came up through a Montessori education. So that was very genuine to who I believed they should be as good citizens in the world. And I kind of get quiet around this with other women scientists because everyone wants this like, oh, it's so hard. I'm like, it's just life. It's hard. Of course it's hard. It's all hard. Marriage is hard. Kids are hard. Little babies are hard. But how do you want to remember it? You're going to have to hold a space in your heart for this time in your life. Do you want it to be bitter and resentful and like filled with disappointment? Or do you want it to be like love, and that can show up in all different ways, right? I know you know this. You have a dad's heart.
What story do you want to tell is kind of what I'm hearing you say. Like, how do you want to characterize it?
Yeah. Yeah. So you show up and I had an idea of what it would look like. We live on a park. So I'm going to go out and have a picnic with my kids. And my little one's like a baby. And he's like, I don't want cold chicken. I'm like, that's not cold chicken. That's picnic chicken. And he's like, I hate picnic chicken. That's just who, that's, and a nice story to bridge that to where I am now is, I worked in pharmaceuticals, with everybody, juggling all the balls in the air and getting on airplanes. And I don't know if you ever saw the movie Notting Hill.
I did, with Hugh Grant.
Yes.
Yes. What a
I
charming
love that
man.
movie. I love that movie. Anyway, so my kids probably saw it more than was healthy. So one time the scene where he's walking, where they're playing Ain't No Sunshine When She's Gone, after he breaks up with her for the zillionth time. And my little kid is in the room. He couldn't have been any older than 3 or 4. And he hears the song. And he's like, Mommy, he goes, that's how I feel when you get on an airplane. And I swear to God, within 3 months, I shut it all down. I left. I started my own consultancy. And I was just like, that's it. He broke my heart.
I bet.
And, now he's like, what are you listening to me for? We had a beach house. We had this life. And you're listening to me? What do I know?
Wow. So geospatial science, and I think there's like a narrative piece to the work that you do now, right? Like it's like, how do you marry science and technology with narrative to make it more accessible to people? Am I like it?
Well, yeah, what it is, it's location intelligence, right? So you think about any point in the world. Just think about a point in the world, right? We know that point, right? The satellites pick it up every 3 or 4 days. So it's like you can talk about anything. We know what's happening in the world. So I use location to tell you, what's happening in neighborhoods, right? Deforestation, what's happening in Goma, at the border between Goma and Rwanda. You can like just zoom in looking at these images and you can see what's happening in the world today. So I use things like that for storytelling to show people what it looks like to have a mine in the Democratic Republic of Congo, how devastating it is and how the people are living. And then I can tell a digital story where now I'm showing you people on their cell phones in San Francisco, like, woohoo, but what we made there is coming from we're outsourcing the harms so that we can have the benefit. Right. So, but I do it not in a way where I'm like shaming people. I'm like, I don't think you guys know what's going on here. Let me show you. Let me show you that since 2022, the world holds more of our shit than it does living biomass. I mean, that hits you more than like wash out your yogurt containers now, and put them in recycling. But when you think about all the crap we're putting on the planet, and these are finite resources, and we're running out of like living stuff, biomass, that hits people in a different way.
So wait, just when you say that there's more of our shit in the world than what, biomass?
Than anything living.
So, okay. So what does that mean? Like our garbage?
Our infrastructure, our roads, anything that's not living. The roads, the waste, the buildings, the asphalt, the, whatever you want to call it. The ships, the cars, that stuff weighs more than all the trees and the birds and the bugs and the animals and the people and blah, 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 blah.
That's so depressing.
Well, that's what I gave a talk at the Museum of Science in Boston, and somebody said, like, I can't do this work because it's too sad. I'm like, but you kind of, I do it with a little bit of humor. If you do it with a visual thing where you're in it, like you're looking at it. I just want people to be able to trust information and through storytelling, right? I mean, story is the difference. Otherwise it's just undifferentiated compute. It's just noise unless we can kind of make some sense out of it. And the same way we tell stories about our lives, our loves, our history, everything about us, it's the same way, like how do we talk about our planet? How do we talk about just the tiny bit of time that we're here? I mean, I want people just to wake up and be real,
How do you do this work? Is it in conjunction with some sort of entity or organization, or are you working on your own?
It's kind kind of word of mouth. Like I speak at a lot of conferences, and then people will hear me speak and say, come speak here and come speak there. And, I'm a tech person. So, if I write about coding, like Python and SQL and, stuff like that. Like
I don't even know what that is, but yeah.
Well, it's a steak. No, it's just the tech world. That's the problem. If we don't tell our stories, you're relying on people like me to take all the pixels in the data and give you a pipeline and tell you how to use it. We don't know how to use it. So we rely on people to kind of tell us the stories about it. And that's, I guess, sort of what I hope to be doing. Because, I've done it all,
Yeah, and I'm just curious, like getting to this place where you're marrying technology and science with narrative, like that was something you arrived at later in your career. It wasn't something you started with, right? Like this is something you discovered along the way and realized was part of your ministry.
Well, my ministry, the atheist with its ministry. I think it was because I was technical. So I would be asked to speak at a podium. But, once you stand at a podium, this, and you see like 300 people out there, you're like, oh, this is good. I like this, So my job was to moderate medical conferences and things like that. So it started from that. And then like, you just kind of get really comfortable with it. So you want to tell a little joke because you want to get people's attention, right? You don't want to be, I used to see people would waste the time when they're at the podium. I want to thank other people for bringing me here for this talk. Well, you should be telling them a story. You should be saying like when I open a talk, I was telling them, hey, I was just in the elevator and I had to push the buttons for 8 people. I thought that was funny because 2 generations ago, the only job my, great aunt could get, Evelyn in Charlotte, was pushing elevator buttons. Because, that's how my brain works. So I will tell you that story and then you're like, all right, I'm not going to be bored to death here. So I tried to let people who had technical stories in their data to liberate the story from the data. So they weren't so busy showing you like bar charts and line graphs and all that crap nobody cares about. There's a story behind all that data. Don't hide behind the data. Tell the story. And because I wasn't shy, I got asked to share people's data. And then I just started doing it for the agencies that I work for. I would be the front face of it. And then slowly matriculated into people asking me to talk about topics that I feel passionate about that now are very timely and I guess sort of marketable. I don't know. I just answer the phone and find out where I'm supposed to be.
Well, and you said you went to the White House. Like, what are some of the more high, like, why did you go to the White House? And then what are some of the other more like high profile gigs that you had?
Well, I went to the White House because, God, this is funny to me. I don't know, because it's weird when I have to tell somebody. So I was studying Alzheimer's research with the careful eye of somebody that had nothing to win or, I had nothing to gain, right? I didn't have a drug on the market. I knew how it's done because I worked in pharmaceuticals and I would look at the data and I'd be like, there's nothing here. There's nothing new under the sun. Why is this drug making all this money? So I wanted to go to this certain Alzheimer's conference and they wouldn't let me in as media. Like if you should be able to get in if you're coming to write a story about it or something. I don't know, but they used to just let you in if you said, oh, I'll write you a little story afterwards. Well, they said, no, you have to pay like everybody else. And I wasn't having it. So one of my friends was a physician that was going. So I took her badge and I went into this conference and I kind of got all the info and I thought it was horrific. And because they wouldn't give me access to the speakers and all that, every 12 years, and I'm sure this isn't going to happen now, they have a conference on aging at the White House. And it just so happened that it landed during the Obama years. So I was still feeling a certain way that they didn't give me the access they should have at the Alzheimer's conference in Toronto. So I wrote the White House. I'm like, I want to come because blah, 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 and I just put it all out there and they accepted me. And they let me come, which was rare because all the funding had been cut. So they had to be very selective. So I just thought I was going to get punked. So I show up, I go to the gate, they tell me to. I'm like, well, now I'm going to get punked. And then I get in And then I get into by the West Wing where you wait to go into the press little area there, which by the way is really weird. Like I always thought like the press area at the White House would be like filled with desks and people. It's like one desk for Reuters, one desk for the like little tiny desks down a long hallway. Well, anyway, so I got there and then we went over to the East Wing, which is where the president was. And, everybody's like talking shit like, oh yeah, it's Obama, whatever. I'm telling you, when this man comes in the room, anyone, both sides of the aisle were like, just like in awe because we're all sitting wrapped around the room and we think, oh, look, we have such a great seat. The president should be out any minute. As soon as he's coming, a whole different team of people come and block us. They put the lights up. Different people are here. Different people are there. It was quite a thing. Then he came out and what he said first never was put in any transcript. But Obama comes out and he welcomes us all coming to this thing. He goes, "'Cause I'm aging in dog ears up in here." And, we just spent the whole day talking about fixing the world for as we age, and it was like Diane Nyad was there. Like like the person sitting next to me was like a NPR reporter. I'm taking pictures of her, sending it to my mom. Look, I'm cheating off her.
Wow, that seems like so long. I mean, like talking about that makes me a little bit wistful. Like when they had like a belief in science in this country. Like I'm curious to know like what you seem very positive as a person and somebody who's sort of like unbowed and undefeated and you just kind of refuse to succumb or to wallow in any kind of negativity. That's the vibe I get off of you. And yet there is a lot to wallow in these days. There's a lot of reasons for negativity. Like, how are you processing all of this?
But I know the facts. I know the Constitution. I know how the world is supposed to work. I mourn for my little Bonny in like third grade who believed in my little civics class and how everything was going to be. But I also can smell bullshit a mile away. So I know what the Constitution holds. And I know, like, all right, so I understand all of that. So I'm not easily scared. The headlines, like I used to be a member of the National Press Club. I quit over the way the press has been conducting themselves, say the last 5 to 10 years. I just didn't want to be ever like thought of loosely even as a journalist or anything like that. Cause I used to, I had a blog where I talked about political stuff, blah, 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 Alzheimer's and all that stuff. I just left it all behind because I think things through and I can't carry it around with me all day. Like I subscribe to the Financial Times and the New Yorker. That's it. I don't watch the other stuff. You just can't because it's a clown show and you just have to wait for, the car to run out of gas or whatever's going to happen. That's, what else can you do? But I feel for the people that read the headlines and get whiplash because this is happening, that's happening, this is happening. I'm like, well, no, that's not happening. We're never going to live on Mars. I don't care what that buffoon says. No one's living on Mars, not Homo sapiens anyway. There might be Homo flaccidius, some other generation of us that can live in a zero gravity environment with no air, but it's not going to be us, I mean, nobody wants to take a flight to South Africa. Who's going to want to sit on a plane and go to Mars? You know what I mean?
And then get there, and what do? You go inside some bubble, and you live there for the rest of your life indoors? Like, that seems like a prison.
Did you ever watch Madagascar with your kids, the movie?
Maybe.
With the little penguins, they take the ship or whatever, and they take it to Antarctica, and they finally get there. They get out, and it's all snowy and cold, and they just go, well, this sucks.
Yeah, that's my feeling about Mars. I talk about this all the time. Zero interest in being there. None.
That's what you call thinking with words. You can say, we're going to go to Mars and people will invest in rockets And people say AI is the end, and then the whole economy evolves around AI. That's not how economy works. That's how I stay like quiet and centered, because, it's nothing new under the sun. AI is not new. What's new is that they're stealing our information, creating models, creating enclosure, and then charging you for it. That's the new bit, not the technology. We've been doing algorithms and modeling, we've been doing this for so long. It's the way we're doing it now that's new. So as we build up all these data centers across the planet to process all the data and take all the groundwater that we don't even have to cool them, this is the stuff that's the scary time stuff,
Yeah, they stole my books. Meta did to feed their language model.
Did you fight back?
I don't. What do I do? Do I lawyer up?
Here. This woman. Wait, Jane Friedman. Just remember her name.
Well, she's going to be on the show soon.
She is not.
Yes. If we're talking about the same Jane. Yeah, that Jane.
Oh, that's the only good thing that came out of my press club membership was she came and she spoke to us. And she taught me how to make a business out of being a creative. She is phenomenal. You're going to love her. You're going to love her.
Yeah.
You can cut that out if I'm not supposed to be like, wow, Jane!
Wow, that's a small world. Well, I guess like you're hopeful for the hopeful about the future in some fundamental way. Like you're not a doomer, or are you?
Oh, I'm not a doomer. I'm brave, I'm courageous, and I'm patient. And that's really all we can ask of ourselves. Think of this to the times that our parents and their parents had. There was the Cold War. There's always something. There's always something to keep the people here, so that the power can be here. Whatever that is, to keep the artifice going, or the infrastructure, or the illusion going. But it's all a myth. It's a myth. Anything that doesn't, the financial industry, the whole thing is a myth. Because we don't know. We all buy, some of us, we buy stocks and it's all built on probability. We don't know. We don't know the money we invest today is going to be worth anything tomorrow. So it's a myth. It's this thing we tell ourselves. If I give you money and I tell you it's worth this, here's some money, a couple euros. There's no value in any of our money anymore, right? It's not based on anything. There's no value intrinsic since the 70s when Nixon took us off, the gold. It's just me telling you that this money is worth whatever I say it's worth. And it's just knowing that we could tell ourselves a different story and perpetuate a different myth that maybe is what holds our future. Like, who knows?
We definitely need better stories.
We do. When you hear, I don't know if you saw this, it was something on somewhere where somebody wrote their mobile number on like a Jenga piece in a, what do you call those places where people with no money stay when they travel?
A hostel?
Yes. I just revered a lot of stuff about my travel habits to you. But they wrote on a Jenga piece their number. And so all of a sudden, like years and years and years and years later, they get this image in Iceland of these people sitting around a table playing Jenga, smiling and waving because they got the piece with the number on it. Now that's our humanity, and that's what's going to save this world. I just find that to be the most beautiful thing in the world, and how the person who got, out of all these years later, got that message on his phone. Look at that connection. Don't you feel it? And that wasn't you. And it's got nothing to do with you, but it's such a beautiful story that I think that is going to be the currency that we exchange that's going to help us through.
Well, Bonnie, it has been an absolute delight to talk with you. I am so grateful for the time, and I wish you well.
I wish you well, and I'll be watching. I'll be paying attention to you, see what you're up to next.
Okay, that was good, right? That was fun. That was my conversation with Bonny, a 61-year-old geospatial scientist from Greensboro, North Carolina. My thanks again to Bonny for talking, and thanks to you for listening. Again, if you're out there and you or someone you know might be a good guest for this character studies series, you can email me. The address is letters@otherppl.com. The idea is to talk with a variety of people, non-writers, non-media figures, human beings from all walks of life. So anyone's welcome. Just email me, letters@otherppl.com. Don't forget to subscribe to this show wherever you listen. And you can also subscribe on YouTube. Follow me on social media, Bluesky and Instagram. Sign up for my newsletter over at bradlisti.substack.com. If you love this show, you can join the Other People Patreon over at patreon.com/otherpplpod. Help keep this show going. And if you want to get a book club membership, or if you want to get an Other People t-shirt or a sweatshirt, you can do that at the show's official website, otherppl.com. If you want to learn about my new company, which will be launching later this year, it's called Deep Dive, and the website is www.deepdive.audio. You can follow Deep Dive on Instagram and Bluesky. And if you have 2 minutes and you want to help me out, if you want to give this show a little lift, please rate it wherever you listen. So Spotify, Apple Podcasts, what have you, give it a rating, write a little review. It takes 2 minutes and it would help the show in the algorithm. It helps the show find new listeners. So I think that's it. Oh, coming up on Tuesday, I will be in conversation with Stephen Graham Jones, the acclaimed horror writer. He has a new novel out called The Buffalo Hunter Hunter. A lot of buzz, a lot of excitement around this book and around the work of Stephen Graham Jones. You don't want to miss this conversation. Stay tuned.